When you look at great art, what you're seeing is great presence. What the person is doing is kind of irrelevant. In many cases, is absolutely irrelevant. So I place a great emphasis on acting or on art, any creative endeavor, in first presence. That's where reality is. First be, then act. First you have to find this to be able to do something with it. Does that make sense? You have to find this before you can do something honest with it, or authentic. Authentic is the word. So anyways, I wrote down these 5 things that I consider in my study over the decades in various traditions, various people, great masters, fantastic artists, what I think makes for excellent presence. So this is really, these are just kind of, I'm trying to make it as condensed as possible. So these are simple phrases that I would just like to give you, and then maybe over time you can come back and look at them and see what they provoke in you. Okay. Make sense? So in thinking of the people I know who have exceptional presence, they all embody these common traits. Open receptivity and panoramic perception. Open receptivity. Speaking about intimacy before, you see the relationship, and you can see the relationship to the conversation you just had. Open receptivity, but also panoramic perception. Panoramic perception. So not just this, but also that, and I can feel her mood. I can feel her mood. So I can get away with this conversation because she's still here. I can keep going. I can see that she's kind of there. But panoramic perception. You're picking up the nuances and details 360 degrees. Open receptivity, panoramic perception. Make sense? Okay. 2, attentiveness and conviction in engagement. Attentiveness. Yes? Attentiveness. No distraction. We talked about distraction earlier, yes? No distortion, no distraction, no presence. Paul read that wonderful piece on we miss heaven purely by distraction. Attentiveness and conviction in engagement. This relates to what I just said about I love you. We never get to the conviction, to that depth of conviction. Make sense? Attentiveness and conviction and engagement. So you understand the ideas. 3, unself-conscious equanimity and generosity. Unself-conscious means you are not holding some of your engagement back to steady yourself. How do I look? How do I smell? I'm embarrassed. Well, what about the presentation or the presence, the awareness is completely outside. There's no held back study of myself. Equanimity, do you know the term? Equanimity, anybody? Beautiful word.
Grace and balance. Grace and balance.
Grace, or serene balance. Serene balance. And generosity. So if you think of a great actor, people don't often place that word on it, but there's always more generosity. They're giving more than the average person would, or than the average actor would. They know how to do it, they can find the motivation to do it, and there's a technical capacity to do it. Instead of, they know how to do it, and have a capacity to do it, and you see the difference. Yes? Okay. Unself-conscious, equanimity, and generosity. So this is where the generosity thing, that now has to do with morals, ethics, spirituality, intent, motivation. It has to do with deeper things. You cannot achieve greatness as an artist without stumbling into that realm, without bringing all 4 bodies to the show. There has to be some spirituality in what you're doing. Not necessarily religion, but some spirituality. There has to be. Does that make sense? just generosity itself, we could spend 3 hours talking about. Most people, like intimacy, I think they have no idea what generosity is. Generosity is used in the buy and sell game. You give something to be seen giving something. It's bait. Most true generosity is anonymous, and you didn't even see you didn't even see where it came from. You're not even aware that it's being given to you. The person truly is generous. They don't want to be seen as being generous. That takes study, practice, maturity, subtlety, nuance, granularity. Yeah? Makes sense? You following this? Unself-conscious equanimity and generosity. 4. Close, conscious proximity to essential priorities. Close, conscious proximity to essential priorities. My essential priorities, not yours, not. This is important because that gives you substance, that gives you stance, that gives you weight in what you're doing. This is me. These are my priorities that I'm engaging here. You cannot wander off into fantasy in presence. There must be whatever you're engaging in terms of emotion or art or conveyance, that it has to somehow have its roots in your actual priorities, in your actual priorities. Does that make sense? Yours. So to a certain degree, you have to know yourself what your priorities are. But somebody who has great presence, you can always feel that. They may wander in subject matter, but you always feel like there's a pertinence there. The person's always talking really about the same thing, or always in a certain state that you can feel or smell. There's a constancy, a tenacity. You understand what I'm saying? Essential priorities. Make sense so far? And last, self-generated. You generate it yourself, not from another source. Self-generated enthusiasm and inspiration. You don't get it from another source and then channel it through you. You generate it yourself, whether you're in the mood or not. So that implies strength. That implies independence, a lot of strength, power. But power correctly used. Makes sense? Well, I'm not in the mood. Well, I can't find it. Well, I can self-generated, not dependent on your state, how you feel. I don't have all those emotions today. Okay. The difference between somebody who is in a realm of good or even excellent and somebody who's transcendent is going to be, I'm going to generate the enthusiasm and inspiration irrelevant of my circumstance, my mood, my energy, or anything else. That kind of power. You follow me? That's something, that's somebody who's taking a stand in creating their own energy, and everything around them will fold into that. They're not dependent on some other source that I'm then running through me, so I'm using other people or other things for that. It's the buck stops here. I give it birth here, which also is the difference between somebody who is a good con and someone who's a creator.